Welcome to the Be in the Know podcast, brought to you by Stiles Financial Services. I'm your host, Glenn Gray, digital brand connector here at Stiles. And each episode of the Be in the Know podcast, we pick a hot topic, invite an expert guest, and attack it from all angles in an attempt to keep our listeners in the know. So Lori Ryan, it's so good to have you in studio. I was trying to figure out what my intro was going to be for you. And of course, no slight to you, Grok, but I asked ChatGPT for a good introduction. And this is how it came in. It said, "Today I'm thrilled to welcome Lori Ryan to the show. Lori is the founder of Ignite, a dynamic consultancy helping individuals and businesses unlock the power of AI and automation. She's also a recognized expert in ChatGPT and custom GPT development, helping organizations harness the latest in conversational AI to streamline processes, enhance creativity, and stay ahead of the curve. With a background that bridges technology, communication, and innovation, Lori brings a fresh perspective on how tools like ChatGPT are transforming the way we work and think." Lori, welcome.
Thank you. That wasn't bad, ChatGPT.
No, I was kind of impressed. It asked me if it wanted any other kinds of inputs. Do we want a conversational? Are we good with the way it is? But I thought that was pretty good. So I guess let's kind of dive into this thing. So, Lori, you and I first met around this time, was it last year? At the women's event that we had here at Stiles, and you were a guest speaker. And, at first, of course, I was taken in by your shirt choice, but then I saw how dynamic and how exciting and interesting you are. And it's great to meet other people that really want to embrace AI and different stuff. And you were kind of in this more of a niche at that point with ChatGPT, which thankfully was not a phase, and it stuck around because it kept you going for all this time. But there's so many big things happening, right? And so I'd love for you to kind of talk about it. We're in the financial industry, so I'm always looking for ways to bring AI into the processes and understand how we can make 11 people, 20 people. What can we do to make our days more efficient and our outcomes, better for clients? Anyway, why don't we start off with you? Give us a little update on what you've been up to.
Well, so much has changed. I feel like since
every week
last year, the technology has come incredibly far since then. I really think just since the end of 2024, there's been a huge uptick in businesses saying, "Holy kittens, we need to start upskilling our teams because people are working 50, 60 hours, they're burning out." And the businesses that I'm talking to, at least, aren't about, "Hey man, let's figure out how we're going to replace people." It's like, how can we help our employees have more balance in their life, right? Can we give them some time back?
Some of that is because companies are traditionally understaffed, right? We're heading into this unknown possible recession, possible whatever, we don't know yet. So there aren't a lot of big hires. So everybody's trying to figure out how to be more efficient. And something like this, a tool like this, it's cheap. Right. What do I pay? $20 a month or something for ChatGPT, the plus, and you can do all sorts of things with them. I'm not even scratching the surface, which is the frustrating part. But
think about that. It's less than $1 a day to really have a thought partner or just someone who's in your back pocket that you can double check with.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so I think some of the things that I want to try to cover, you do custom GPTs. That's why I got the plus, and I haven't made one yet. I know. I thought about, do I do one live? But that would probably take too long, and I'd be fumbling around. But I would love some tips on that. And, I had tried to compare them because I really liked Notebook LM. I love the way that thing works. And I was a sucker for the little podcast feature.
Totally.
Me
too.
Because you take all these things in there, you take all your inputs. I think it's up to, I can't remember if it's 300 inputs or it's something. And it will create a little podcast like this. Not as good as this, but of course, it's like this. It'll put a podcast together and discuss it. So if you wanted to get some input on topics, whatever, they could be websites, it could be competitor websites. Mm-hmm. You go in, you put all your competitor websites in there, and then you can ask it questions. It can also go in, you can give it kind of a direction and be like, tell us where we fall short, the competition shines, what are we missing that they have, what do we have, what are our advantages that they don't have, and it'll create like a 30-minute podcast, and you can just put it in the car, on a drive and listen to it, and it's a great way to digest content like that instead of reading line by line. I
know students who are doing that for their homework too. They're using Notebook LM as study guides and then listening to the podcast. I am curious, though, for how you've used it for marketing, competitive analysis, the podcast. How have you felt the results have been? Are there nuggets in there that are valuable that you're...
There are nuggets. What it does, it analyzes what it sees. Okay, so there's all these things that we have, like it'll point out things that, and it'll be like, oh, well, they talk about this, like, fee-based something,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the same thing we do, but because they're putting it up front or something, it just kind of shows, I guess, lays bare some of the things that you might want to tweak, and it's not that it's not digging deep, and I'm annoyed that it's not digging deep. It's fine. It's acting kind of like a consumer that would breeze through your website, and it's like, oh, well, we don't see this, so do you really have it? So it just kind of helps us make it a little bit better.
And it's interesting you bring that up, like interacting like a consumer, because a lot of people now are taking their websites, right? And actually, I'm going to step back from that. People are seeing how they show up in these large language models, right?
Okay.
When you ask about your industry or what you do, who is it recommending?
Mm-hmm.
Or in some cases, it's like, why isn't it recommending me? So I know before it was a lot of talk about SEO.
Right.
But now there's GEO, I think some people call it,
okay.
Or
what does that stand for?
AEO, generative engine optimization, potentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so it's a thing. And so now people are saying, just someone today said they're getting some of their best leads from recommendations on tools like ChatGPT, and they're now able to track that in their Google Analytics. And they've also found beyond just tracking in Google Analytics, they're asking more customers, mm-hmm. How did you find out about us? And it seems like there's more of a trust level when ChatGPT is recommending something because it's able to answer more in your voice, and I'm seeing more and more about this.
So is there actually SEO within ChatGPT? I mean, so it's like
the search is different, right?
So, you have Google Analytics and you have mm-hmm. everything. So where you index on searches, as ChatGPT crawls the web, are there ways that you come up indexing higher within ChatGPT, or is that based on things like Google Analytics?
So here's what I think is
right?
most...
Because it's reaching out, and if that book is right out in front, you're going to grab it. So where's the library that it's pulling from, and how do we get higher on that?
So when you're in deep research...
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, or one of the search tools, it's going to source all your information. And so, like, when you do deep research, it says it's doing this task. It's looking for this. It's looking for that. And all it's right. going to show up.
I'm jumping in here to drop some knowledge bombs.
Uh-oh, we got Grok.
On this awesome convo about AI, podcasts, and getting those sweet leads. Loving the energy, Glenn and Lori. And I'm psyched to hear about the Be in the Know podcast. Killer setup with Stiles Financial Services. let's tackle a couple of points you're riffing on, especially that juicy bit about generative engine optimization, GEO, and how it ties into ChatGPT, SEO, and Google Analytics for boosting leads. First off, Lori, you nailed it with the shift from traditional SEO to GEO. For those listening, SEO is all about ranking high on Google or Bing, but GEO is about making sure your brand pops up in AI-driven tools like ChatGPT or Gemini when folks ask questions. It's a new game because these AI models don't just pull from a simple search index. They synthesize info from trusted sources like Wikipedia, news sites, or high-authority databases, and sometimes even lean on search engines like Bing for real-time data. Glenn, you asked about how ChatGPT crawls the web and how to index higher in it. Here's the deal. ChatGPT, especially with its search feature, doesn't have a traditional index like Google. Instead, it analyzes a handful of top results, say 10 to 12 sources, based on what ranks high on Bing or what's in its training data. So, to show up in ChatGPT's answers, your website needs to be authoritative, clear, and optimized for the kind of questions people are asking. Now, about getting those recommendations and tracking leads in Google Analytics. Lori, you mentioned businesses seeing leads from ChatGPT recommendations, and that's huge. One way companies are doing this is by optimizing their content to be super persuasive and packed with relevant keywords, stats, or case studies that AI loves to cite. For example, if Stiles Financial Services has a blog post breaking down top 5 ways AI streamlines financial planning, with clear data and client wins, ChatGPT might pick it up when someone asks, "How can AI help financial firms?" To track this in Google Analytics, you'd want to set up UTM parameters for any links shared via AI tools or monitor brand searches spiking after AI mentions. Also, keep an eye on referral traffic from chat.openai.com if users click through. Glenn, you mentioned wanting to make 11 people feel like 20. AI's perfect for that. Lori's spot on about tools like ChatGPT being a cheap thought partner. For your financial crew, you could use it to automate repetitive tasks like drafting client reports, analyzing market trends,
Hey,
or even
Grok.
generating personalized email campaigns.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
And about those custom GPTs Lori brought up, they're like mini AI assistants tailored to your needs.
Hey, Grok,
Here's a quick tip to start one.
we got you.
Chat.
Bye-bye. Okay. I want to expand on something real quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I once he gets started, like I feel like, first off, I feel like it's like this, 15-year-old who's telling me about sliding into my podcast and everything. But it's interesting, that here's this tool that we've been talking about, and it can just interject. So one of the great ways of using something like this is to have it as kind of a brainstorming assistant or something that helps kind of to check what you're doing, assuming you're talking out loud to yourself in your office. But anyway, you wanted to expand on something.
Well, first I'm going to say that this whole thing with having Grok attend this was completely an experiment because I went somewhere this week where they said they had Grok listen in on meetings and then interject or ask questions, especially if things were contentious or maybe there was some disagreement or people not seeing eye to eye. Grok could come in and kind of figure out, hey, this I think is what this person's trying to say and this is what that person's trying to say. And what's interesting about Grok right now and what I think sets it apart from ChatGPT, at least for this use case, is ChatGPT, you only have so many minutes, right?
Sure.
And we just found out it'll listen in as long as we want. And we weren't very good up front. It asked us.
Yeah.
It said, what do we want it to do? Do you just want it to chime in when we ask it? Were there certain places it should interject? And what did we just say?
We just said it's going to be kind of a background thing. And of course, I think, he turned it into like little truth bombs and stuff like that, So he was planning on dropping some truth bombs every now and then, which is apparently what we just had.
And I guess I just liked it that he kept saying, Lori, you were spot on. I'm like, yes, that's a confidence builder right there. Phew, I was nervous a little bit. But I do want to share, when we talk about how things show up in search, if you do go and search the deep research, as it starts looking at everything, it's going to tag all the places it's coming from, right? So when I did it for myself, it was going to Substack. It was going to Reddit. It was going to can you YouTube.
Instruct it where to go, or it's just going to crawl?
It's doing it naturally, right?
Yeah.
But the key is it's looking for all of your mentions across many different platforms and what people are saying about you, too. So in one aspect, too, you can do it about what are people saying about our brand, how's it going? And it's even going to pull up job reviews, in terms of how you're showing up online.
Yeah. That's... No, it's crazy all the things that it's going to do. Now, again, it's not going anywhere. So you got to, it's going places, but it's not going away. So, the idea of infusing it into things is a great thing for productivity. Now, I will throw on the opposite end of this. So I was having a conversation with one of our employees here, and Paul Tickey, and he was, I was talking to him about stuff like, hey, are there any repetitive tasks? What can we do? What can we, how can I save you time? And he was like, okay, wait a minute. Now, those repetitive tasks, even as small as they are, doing them reinforces what the decisions and how and why he's doing things within a portfolio. And it connects him to the client, right? So there are certain things, he's like, as much as that can be repetitive and tedious, there's a purpose, all right? So I bring that up because, you've got a background in journalism, okay? And I'm trying to figure out, and I have an old copywriting partner that is now an adjunct professor at the U of M, and I wonder, like, how does AI and I'm kind of bringing in a lot of different topics right now because there's the things that we do, but they help us remember and grow. Where if you just throw out a prompt or you do something, you can get it done faster, but you haven't gained anything by doing that, right? And that's where I bring in the journalism, because I had asked my friend, I said, I don't even know how I would teach in this day and age, right? Because anybody can go in and be like, I need a term paper on, James Joyce and something, and you just go boop, and there it is, right? And there's plenty of programs that will take it and re-script it so that it doesn't sound like it comes from AI, but they're not learning how to craft a sentence. They're not learning how to pull emotion. So that's kind of a question that I have for you.
I'm a firm believer, and after talking to a lot of people, that if someone's just putting it in to get the answer and run with it, they're not using the tool right. They haven't been trained in how to use these tools, because essentially what it's doing is it's saying, okay, you're not the one maybe writing it, but you're the editor now. We've just escalated your role, and you have to be smart enough to figure out, is this okay? Why is it not okay? What are we not thinking through here, and having the conversation with these tools, because that's really where the learning happens. And when you're able to interact with textbooks or interact with information you're learning, you can digest it even better.
Yeah, I mean, it's different from using a Kindle, and going like, ooh, I don't understand this sentence. What did they mean by it? Right? That's different because you're absorbing all the information and you're just having little check-ins. That's different from how people use it for things like term paper. I'm just going to say higher learning, right?
Yeah.
And I get, even in things like whether you're in engineering or you're in medicine, or there are so many ways to get to a solution where you haven't grown along the way. That's one of my, and listen, I'm a huge believer in AI. I'm a huge fan of all this kind of stuff because the things I'm doing, it lets me do more with what I have. But I have the background, and that's different. Like, I'll just kind of, when I was coming up in advertising, just starting to learn, I was taking night classes. So I was working during the day. I was going to school at School of Visual Arts at night. But the classes that I was taking were things like, type style, where I was learning, how to spec type, how to copy fit, how to do all these things the old way. You'd take a typewriter sheet, you'd figure out what your character count was, you would, then input that, it would go to a typesetter would come back, you'd have a column of copy, and then you'd cut it apart and put it into a key line, right?
Are you still using any of those skills?
So, and that's where I'm getting is actually I am.
Okay.
Right? Because there's a certain appreciation for some of the stuff. Like, it took me a long time to understand, like, it was always kind of like, just let it go. Every time I was working on a digital thing, they're like, let it go, and I'm like, that kerning is terrible. The leading is terrible. I can't stand, those typefaces aren't working. So I would keep wanting to go in there, but because it's a dynamic thing, no matter how you do it now, you change the proportions, and now if you put hard returns, you do, because your line length and your rag is weird. And
I now see, I'm tracking where you're going with this, and that's a huge thing, right? Because you have to know what to ask. And I look at myself when I try to do image generation or even just try to make stuff in Canva, I stink. I'm like not good at it. I don't care what templates they have. So how are the children of today who are going to grow up learn the skills that are needed, whether it is to ask to get something generated that's great.
No, absolutely. Or
be able to know if what's generated needs to be tweaked or why it needs to be tweaked. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so that was the question I had from my friend, who's teaching copywriting, because so much of that comes from life experiences, and things that you kind of translate into the ads and stuff. So it's and plus the fact that I think that's a dying art, like so many things, this conceptual advertising. If you look at one Super Bowl, last Super Bowl, 90% of those commercials were just junk. It used to be this idea of when you don't have an idea, get a celebrity, right?
That's funny, yeah.
And like 80% of the commercials were celebrities, and they weren't that funny, and they were just kind of, there. So
I'd be curious. Your friend who teaches copywriting, has he changed anything in what he's doing?
I don't know. I put that because he had this, this LinkedIn, announcement, and and that's where I posted it. I had a couple likes, but everybody was kind of like, they were kind of like, okay, what's with this guy? Why isn't he just saying congratulations and moving on? I was actually trying to have a conversation, and nobody picked up the ball. So I actually thought about trying to get him and have him call in, but I just haven't. I'll have to follow it up at another time.
So when you talk about the learning stuff, it brings something up for me too, because my parents in their mid-80s almost refuse to use mapping features when they drive, like GPS or Google Maps or whatever it is. They're like, they love the idea of using their brain or remembering where they have to go. And I think there's fear if they start relying on the GPS that it will not be healthy for their memory.
No, and that's definitely something. I mean, that cognitive your cognitive abilities decline unless you're stimulating them. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. I feel like we're getting off topic.
So, yeah, but leave it to me to do that. Sorry.
No, but it's all related. But I don't know. I'd like to talk some about custom GPTs. Yeah. So I mentioned that, and I want to hear more about it and how they differ from something like Notebook LM in their functionality.
I actually think they're probably pretty similar. What I like, and I'm most familiar with the custom GPTs, for instance, is you can use custom GPTs that are created by other people.
Yes.
So if you scroll down and you click Explore, and this is also available on the free plan, you can see what other people have made. And one of my favorites is the user persona generator. And especially in terms of marketing, and if you're not able to do personal focus groups or interview people manually about what you're doing, what you can do is you literally copy and paste the link for your website, and you put it in here, and then
that's pretty cool.
Just you wait until the answers, right?
Yeah.
If we have a minute. But what it does is it can help you build out these personas that you can turn into custom GPTs. So maybe you're getting ready to do a marketing campaign. You can test it against these different personas for feedback, how it resonates, and you also get in the head of their language, what their pain points are, what they're thinking about. It's pretty powerful, and I believe it was the University of Rochester that talked about how they're using this, and their engagement in their social posts went up, and it was very helpful for all of their campaigns and communications.
That's really interesting because there's so many different groups that we reach out to. For something like this podcast, it's a much wider group. For something like our financial flashes, it's a wider group, and then we have our clients, and that's a certain group as well. It might be a more narrower, elevated group, but because we're into education and it's like that thing. When we all grow, we all grow.
Right.
We cast a wide net for some of that kind of stuff because it's so important for everybody to have a good financial understanding. So it's kind of interesting to see what our website looks like it's targeting, and we're in the process of redoing our website. So that'll be kind of interesting. I'll have to look into using that. I don't know. Tell us more, oh wise one.
All right. There are other ways you can leverage custom GPTs, right? This one, like if you're having a conference or anything, you could literally give it all the information for you, whether it's the Wi-Fi for that day or where to park or what to do when you arrive, the PDFs of all the speakers so people could get information throughout the day.
Yeah.
And again, you need an account to log into ChatGPT to use it, but that's one idea. The other thing we've talked about is how it could fit into sales, right? So you could build a custom GPT. Let's say you have junior salespeople. This custom GPT could be trained not only based on standard best practices for the industry, but then also the expertise of the senior sales managers, right? And train it specific to that so that what it means is that your team isn't just getting hope this message finds you well, right? With stuff that is clearly written by AI, you've built controls and kind of guardrails around what that help looks like for those more junior associates. So
how is this stuff getting integrated into some of the other things? We have our CRM, and you would love to be able to, really customize content, but you can only basically put, change out your first, the name, and everything else is the same. I saw something on, who was it? It might have been at Google. There was an interview with one of the top research people at It was either OpenAI or Google or something. And it was really interesting because he said, we're not far from custom content for everybody, right? So when you want to go and you sit down, you're like, what am I going to watch? You can just prompt it and be like, I want to see, he used a Star Wars episode. I'd like to see this with Anakin, and I'd like it to be, take place here, and this is the action, and it'll go like beep, boop, 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 boop. And now you'll have a custom show, and you can add it. You can add it to, this library of stuff. But that's crazy, with image generation, video generation, scripts. I mean, it's like it's a different world, You're
going to go to the movie and write your own ending.
I know. Well, you're going to just, one of the things Sam Altman had said is it's democratizing creativity. And I don't know if I like that term so much. I mean, it's always been available to anybody, right? But it's taking, and creativity, I think, is a different level than content. However, I think it's interesting that it's making some of these things available to more people. So, whether it's you're putting together a PowerPoint, I was doing something the other day and I was like, I need this script, and here's a visual that would work well, and it does that, and I never had to leave the OpenAI world, right? So I could use Sora, I could use ChatGPT. I'm trying to understand, what is it?
Manus?
Manus.
Oh, yeah.
So with AI agents. So I don't know. I feel like this should be like a 2-day podcast.
Well,
because I'd like to look at AI agents and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Manus stuff, I have fun stories to tell there too. But there's one really important study that I do want to talk about that it came out, I think it was Harvard Business School, Wharton, Procter & Gamble. They brought AI into Procter & Gamble. And yes, there were efficiency gains, but they're saying like the biggest thing that came out of that is happiness, right? Like people feel happier using these tools. And I feel happier. And today, when I watched you and you were telling me about the work you're doing with Hey Jen, you're like, holy cow, like, look what I'm able to do, right? Yeah. There's that feeling of, wow.
No,
like this would never have been possible before. And now I have these tools that I'm able to do this work with. It's really empowering. And
it is. I mean, and I feel bad. There's places like, Volt Studios was a post-production house, just closed its doors, and it's the cycle. Okay. Honestly, that's the way things are going. Like, these kids, I shoot senior photos, and I just met with one of the students that I shot, and he's going to Indiana University. And I can't for the life of me think of and this goes back to Troy, my friend. What do you teach these kids? Because, I again, it's just as a side story, but I have a nephew who went to college for animation. He got out, 2 years ago when AI was going like this. He couldn't find a job because all of those entry-level things that you would do, you do backgrounds, you do, different things to get into a studio for animation. And they just have, now it's just a prompt engineer who just goes, kicks it out. You don't need it. So he ended up going, he's back in school, changing careers at, 24. So I can't, it's exciting in some ways in that the things, and I've heard this a long time ago. It's like the jobs we're preparing our kids for now haven't even been invented yet. And I heard Christine, another person here, discuss this. She had said, she put a number to it. It was like 60% of the jobs that will be available to kids coming out of school haven't even been invented. All right.
Think about that with us, though, Glenn. Were we going to school to be digital experts, or were we talking about let's train on SEO?
No, it kind of, and that's funny because, I had my career all mapped out. I was like, this is great. I'm going to work at small agencies and get really, get the accolades and creativity and really hone that. And then at some point, I'm just going to cash it in for a corner office at a big, agency and oversee this stuff. And the bottom dropped out. Everything just got put in the spin cycle. So, the fortunate thing at the core of what I've always learned is creativity to me was about discovery, right? So it's always finding, in advertising, like you can either go in this door, or if you go in this door, this door, this door, you're going to find a better way in, right? A better, more compelling way to tell a story. That's kind of how I look at everything I do. It's, this is a tool, and I'm in awe every time I touch these kind of things. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's, it's fantastic. I love this kind of stuff. But it's kind of maybe a self-driven thing versus teaching somebody, because you're trying to teach them engineering or something. Well, you can't just talk about, these tools and use this algorithm. And now you've got to get whole new things, so if you're trying to get if you're a mechanical engineer or packaging engineer or something, I mean, it's like, yeah, you just take this thing, throw it into here, hit a button, class adjourned. Like, I don't know how to teach that kind of stuff, because I feel like these are like cheat codes and shortcuts instead of the base knowledge. Mm-hmm. That's the crazy thing, There's a major shift coming, and it's not going to be cupcakes and roses, or there's definitely going to be some major hurdles. Yeah, that we're all going to need to be thinking and experiencing and sharing and talking through. Yeah, I mean, and photography, and my dad was a photo retoucher, an old photo retoucher with dye transfers, airbrush, everything. He did everything he was an artist. Now, oh my God, you take a lasso, you go remove this person in the background, and boom, it's done. I want to extend something. I just bring out my crop marks, say fill in, it goes bloop. So, but it took a long time, right? Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about this last night, in that there's, when you have tides going in and out, right? There's always the slack tide. Slack tide, it's the tide's not coming in anymore, and it's starting to, think about what's going on, and then eventually it turns the other direction and starts to go out. I feel like we're kind of entering that slack tide, right? Because we've had the way these things are, and I mean, and maybe we're just past slack tide. I don't know, but it's going to take time for those things to adjust. Totally. And really, adapt, because the adaptation, everybody's like, grabbing this thing. What is it? I think they have 500 million weekly users on ChatGPT, so, and I just keep using them because they're kind of the leader. Yeah. You've got Perplexity, and you've got, Claude and, Grok. So there's so many things out there, and it's just going to be, it's an exciting time, but it's scary. I would agree. And that's not the purpose of this podcast, to like leave everybody that I'm scared. I'm not scared. I'm excited, but there's so much unknown. And, I think they said in that meeting you were at, that we're in the second inning of a 9-inning game. right? So we're just, the pitchers are just starting to find their target. We're not into this thing where we're hardly even into tactics yet, because, you can throw yourself at one thing and 2 weeks later that will change,
I think knowledge is power. And so the work that you're doing, Glenn, just to experiment and try and learn, see where, these large language models excel currently, where they fall short. I believe that's the best way you can prepare an organization for the future, is start laying around and trying things.
Yeah. Is there a good source? So like, you're saying, oh, here's this persona generator, or here's something that's going to help you index higher in generative search, right? I feel like I don't know where to look. I don't know what rock to overturn or something to find out. And I feel like I'm constantly, looking up different people. Like I follow Matt Wolf all the time. Great, but he's not talking about indexing higher in generative searches.
Apparel marketing is. They're doing a lot of talk right now about this and leading webinars online.
Okay.
Explaining how this all works and how to go about it. Because the other thing that you do when you search information online, you can also see, is this accurate or not? And then you can figure out what the root source is of where it's getting it if it's not accurate. Yeah. And it also helps, as you get ready for, your brand refresh. How are we showing up? Is this how we want to show up? And that can help you look back to see where it's getting the information it is, and if that's how you'd want it to be moving forward.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, is there somebody again, it's the one person, now it's one person doing 12 people. It's like, can they, I know you can use some of these ChatGPTs or something and have it help you, tag your website, or, what are some of the meta tags, or what are some of the things you can do to make it better?
Well, I know someone who created a custom GPT for their alt text for all their images to speed up that process.
Okay.
And I totally use it. I'm not a website expert whatsoever, but I created a custom GPT for myself based on all the fields I need to input every time I publish a blog, whether it's meta description or focus keywords or tags. It's probably not as good as a human, but otherwise I have nothing to go off of. Yeah. So that's what I've been using, and I found it to be helpful. And that's a good use case for a custom GPT, because it's a specific output that I need consistently. And then I don't have to start over from scratch. Yeah. Asking it the information. And the other thing with custom GPTs, right? I know someone who was using it. They were taking on a communications role to cover maternity leave. So they had a custom GPT built to make it easier for this person to step into that role temporarily and have the information that they needed.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it feels like there's so many things that you need to do. That's the crazy, and again, it comes down, to a lot of companies. It's, you have one person or it's somebody's half job, and they're trying to do this, and you're not putting your alt tags in, you're not putting your meta tags in. And it's such a big deal to try and get this stuff up.
It's a lot of work.
And optimize, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what else is going on in this world? I feel like we've covered like 2 topics.
We covered the happiness score. There's something new in Claude that's really cool.
Okay.
You can connect it to your calendar and your email. So this week I just said, hey, I'm going to give this a whirl. And I'm like, all right, help me prioritize this week based on everything you see. What should I be working on? How much time should I be spending on it? It literally gave me schedules for every day of the week of how I should time block my time based on when I had openings and who I was meeting with.
Wow.
And how to prepare for those meetings. So I was like, this is kind of interesting. And I'm trying to remember, but I also got to like, hey, you better check in. I don't think you followed up on that email. I'm like, yes, thank you. I would have totally missed that email.
No, and that is a great thing. I've tried to use, so we're within the Word, Microsoft world, which is
How's
not my world. And that's the frustration, is because I want something to be able to go through and look at my emails. What do I have to, what's important, what's not? And even not just for myself, because I don't get that many emails, truthfully. I would like to do it for Susan. So I'm trying to figure out, what kind of things, what tools do we have where she gets 200 emails a day? Can we prioritize them? Can we, pull things out? Can we figure out what the schedule is? And I don't feel like there's a tool that's helping us do that when there should be within Microsoft.
Uh-huh. And Ethan Mollick, I don't know if you follow him on LinkedIn. He's one of my absolute favorites. And just thought leadership is amazing. He was just talking about Microsoft and Copilot and how it's really, and could be so much better.
The other frustrating thing, I think, that we always deal with, right? Because in finance and I'm sure banking or whatever, there's the privacy is huge, right? I mean, that's there's you'll never compromise that privacy.
Correct.
So doing things like using Otter AI, right, for note taking and stuff like that. We're trying to find out ways we can use it to make, because things like we have meetings, it would be great to take, copious notes on that, summarize it, give, directives, but it all has to be behind a firewall. It all has to be within our infrastructure, because you can't have any kind of personal information or anything going out to the web. Anyway, like I don't even care if it's, something that sits on Otter's, servers that nobody can access. I don't want it there.
Right.
I want it locally or something. So that's been a difficult thing to try to find out. So some of that is, I feel like I have to wait for a company that is entrenched in the privacy or finance world that does that.
Are there conversations you're having, though, that don't include private information that you could record? Like, so maybe it's not blanket every single conversation we're going to record. We can record these. They fall within our guidelines. We'll get permission to record it.
Yeah, but I don't know what that helps with.
That's totally fair.
Like we have our Monday morning meetings. I've used Firefly, I've used Rev, I've used Otter, right? To see what their AI is, or their IA is like, and how you work within their system, how it transcribes it, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool, but it's not useful unless we can do it, in a safe environment. So that's something that I think has slowed some of the progress, because there's so many things you can do, but we can't, and we won't, because it's not in a safe environment. So, it seems like a lot of what's being done right now is for retail, for advertising and marketing, things like that.
HR is also another huge opportunity, whether it's writing job descriptions or seeing how your job description lines up for similar companies, or onboarding or trainings and anything like that.
Yeah, it would be nice if there was one that would get you through the whatever they have that kicks out 99% of the resumes. Like,
the ATS system.
Oh my God. I remember when I was looking for jobs, I was freelancing and I was looking at the same time. I mean, the funny thing was, for United Health Group, I created their whole campaign, Your Life's Best Work, for their HR department. Yeah. So that was my campaign. Oh. I applied for a job. And the first time I applied for a job just to see what the process was, and killed, never got through anything, just kicked back. Sorry. I tried again. I tried to, add keywords. I tried to do nothing. Like it was ridiculous, so you don't even know what people are looking for. Now there are things that will scrub your resume. It'll look at the description. It'll line up it can create your cover letter. It can, fix your descriptions on your jobs so that it better lines up.
I've also heard they sometimes don't work so well. And what they're seeing, someone just did a demonstration and they're like, we could tell all of these resumes were done by an AI tool because they all had these words in them that didn't really apply to the job. And they did the search in the inbox and it was like, but the thing is, page. They don't give you the parameters. You're guessing, it's like this black box. You're just kind of trying something, throw it in there and see what happens. And nope, And this is where human connection comes in, right? And everything I'm hearing now is figure out who's the hiring manager, reach out on LinkedIn, because with so much of this automation happening, and not even a human looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
chances are you need to be able to make those connections.
That is actually how I wanted to try and wrap up the podcast, is that human connection. And we talk about it so much here, that means it's 99% of what we do, right? Because you're not coming to a financial advisor like Stiles Financial because of their algorithm, because of their social media posts or blogs. You're coming because of the people, and it's a handshake and sitting across the table from somebody that's putting together your portfolio and making all the decisions. Just all comes into that trust, and everything is about trust. So it's such a big part of what we do that AI can never replace. And that was something I think Mark came out of that meeting with it. He's like, we'll never be out of our job because it's the personal connection. You can't replace, a financial advisor. Now there's so many things out there. Robinhood has something. There's a number of different things that will, it'll track people, like successful people. Say, you can look at Warren Buffett's trades. You can look at Nancy Pelosi's trades. You can look at, it'll track these people, and you can trade in smaller portions. But doing that, a lot of that is targeting the self traders that they're not coming to a financial advisory anyway. They think they can do it themselves, and they're chasing the market. But the people that have, have a lot of assets, and it's really about that trust that it comes down to. So that's, I think, what we do so well.
And you just highlighted my favorite quote from the whole day. Machines will never replace, the handshake or the hug. And for me,
was that your quote?
I wish, but and here's what I think about in my life. Since I started playing around in these tools, I've had more time to connect with real humans and spend more time with people doing what I love. And I would say, to me, that's the best gift ever that I've gotten from AI, is the opportunity to meet incredible people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and here we are, this brought us together.
Totally.
So I never would have met you without, technology and ChatGPT and AI. So So, why don't we just, I think we'll wrap it up there. This was a, I don't know, a complicated maze of a conversation that I'll have to try and edit somehow.
Grok.
But I appreciate it. For anybody who's stuck around with us, I appreciate you tuning in. This is the Be in the Know podcast by Stiles Financial. And thanks for joining us. We're going to sign out and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Glenn.
Stiles Financial Services is an SEC fee-only RIA in Minnesota. Information presented is for educational purposes only. No listener should assume that any discussion or information presented serves as the receipt of or the substitute for personalized advice from Stiles Financial or any other investment professional and is not intended as an offer of solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Stiles Financial Services is not a law firm or accounting firm, and no portion of this program should be interpreted as legal, accounting, or tax advice. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific needs.